Hi Brian, welcome to Spinnaker. And today I want to hear your story and story behind this amazing project what you just did, that Refit on Feadship.
We started with one idea to modernize some things. It was built for a Chinese gentleman, so there were some very particular things that didn't go along with the interior style of the American owners.
That was very pre-custom built boat, yeah?
Yes. Well, they were custom to a certain extent. They built 6 of those boats, and they were very similar. So I guess when they originally made the design, you had several options for some customization, but for the most part, they were pretty much spec boats.
How it was to do Refit on with the Feadship?
So those boats are never made to take apart. They're built solid, sound, so nothing comes apart easily. So it was a big challenge. It was definitely a big challenge to give the owners their wishes, but at the same time not interfere with the structural integration of the boat, but also just to stay in line with Feadship's quality. Obviously, they build a unique boat. Everything is almost perfect. So to add a lot of things on an interior and not interfere with Feadship's quality of construction and make it not look like it was an add-on was definitely a challenge.
And question to you, so how long that project been going?
In total, it ended up being 13 months.
That's not big number.
It's not a big number,
For this
especially for the
size
amount of
of
work
the
we
boat?
did. No, not really. But when you do these projects, if you have everything in line, you know exactly what you want to do, you have the budget. The owners of the boat were so accommodating with decision making, making sure the funds were available. So once we built up momentum, we were able to really keep the momentum going really well and not interrupt the work. It's really an important part of the project.
And the most impressive for me, of course, I was on this boat, it was how you changed the interior and, of course, exterior. Which part of exterior did you change?
So this boat was really a unique boat. It was kind of a thorn in Feadship's side. The original owner decided to have a helipad. So of all the 6 boats they built, this one was pretty unique. So we had to remove 23 feet from the sun deck, so about 6 or 7 meters, and 2.5 meters from the bridge deck, the middle deck. The sun deck was so big that it actually extended over the back of the boat. So we brought it back to Feadship's original design. So the naval architect did a great job. And when we did this work, we said to the metal workers, we don't want anybody to be able to tell where we cut the boat. So nobody could tell us where we cut the boat when we were done. So they were amazing. It was great.
I agreed. I saw this by myself, and it was amazing.
So we took the original drawings from Feadship, which when you buy a Feadship, everything is in place. So there's no, you're not searching for anything. Everything's available. So we tried to just keep it in line with their quality. Thankfully, we had their example of workmanship. When we took down the ceiling overheads, we could see all the metal work. It was just really important that everybody we hired to do the work understood the quality, and we stayed consistent with that quality.
And finally, we get to that line, my favorite line about the people behind that refit. So tell me more about how it was for you to deal with this refit, because it was non-stop, day by day, 14 months, pretty intense work.
It was very intense. Obviously, as the owners of the boat saw the progression, you just fall in love with the process. You fall in love with, now you start to visualize what the finished product can be like. So we made a lot of changes during this entire refit. But you can have all the money in the world, you can have the best people involved, but if the people doing the work are not the right people, it doesn't work. I have this thing that I tell all of our team when we start a project is I want our relationships to be better when we finish than when we start. And somehow we succeeded. A lot of things came together. All the obstacles were overcome, and the project was so successful. But we're so fortunate that we have a fantastic group of people we work with. We've done several projects with them, and every time we do another project, it just gets better and better.
And still, you should have, like, you need to have this kind of understanding and calmness, yeah, and kind of softness when you're working with and manage so many people.
How you take care of yourself as a project manager, overseeing so many people, so many personalities. You really have to know when to, be a little more firm, be a little more soft. Everybody has something going on. Mm-hmm. It's just life. And you have to, the way I function and the way I work is I have to just give the benefit of the doubt that someone has something going on. So we first try and understand their situation, and then we work through it. Because for most of the subcontractors, it's 6 days a week. They're doing 8 to 10 hours a day, sometimes 12 to 16 hours a day, especially when you get towards the end of a project. And they're tired. And they have families, and they're away from their families. Normally they would spend weekends at home, but with these projects, it's just very demanding, and it's what we sign up for. I'm super passionate about yachting, the industry as a whole. It's been fantastic to me. And I try to push that passion onto the people I work with, whether it's crew, subcontractors, the owners of the boat. And if we're all passionate about it, then that's 50% of the work right there.
Perfect. And way how you're taking care about people with who you're working with, that's pretty impressive as well for me.
Yeah, I just think it's important. They're people, and they're working hard, and they're surrounded by just extreme levels of wealth. And they see we installed a chandelier that cost $40,000. Mm-hmm. For some of these people, that's almost a year's salary. Yeah, so, you've got to just find that balance. It's really important. But also compliment them when they do a good job and talk through problems. Getting upset, shouting and screaming is not going to help anybody. And I always have this philosophy that the boss is the person writing the check. Mm-hmm. Other than that, you're a team leader, you're a project manager. So if you put on a leader's cap, you behave differently than if someone puts on a boss cap. If you walk around acting like a boss, you behave very differently and you're perceived very differently. Whereas if you take more of a leadership role, you get involved with the work, you really understand what they're doing, you talk through problems, definitely makes a difference. But also, you really have to know what you're doing. And I think if you understand the carpenter's role, the stoneworker's role, the electrician's role, because at some point, all of these people's job comes together, and they're going to be in each other's way. So if you really understand the process, you're able to put somebody on a different project for that day while the electrician is working in that location. Mm-hmm. And then you keep them moving around so you don't lose productivity, but at the same time keep everybody doing what they're supposed to do. It's really important to not have them step on each other's toes, because that creates conflict.
And it's a lot of responsibility. Tell me more about responsibility, because we are still talking about luxury industry. We're talking about yacht. We're talking about millions, 100,000.
Yes. Once again, it depends on your personal philosophy. I'm very fortunate. I've done this for a long time, and you tend to change your perspective and just change the way you manage things. And I've always kept in mind that it's a toy. It's a wealthy person's toy. I don't judge how you accumulate your wealth. That doesn't matter whether you work for it, you inherited it, you started a startup and got wealthy. That's not really important. But I think from my perspective, it's a wealthy person's toy. Mm-hmm. And we're not creating a cure for cancer here. Mm-hmm. We're not solving world starvation. We're just making a toy look pretty. And I think when things get really tense and you're under pressure and people become impatient, I always take a step back and say, what is it that we're actually doing? So we've got to abide by the law. You've got to take care of your pollution and regulations, the EPA. You've got to take care of your finances. You take care of your taxes. All those things are really important. But at the end of the day, you're just making a toy look pretty. And I think if you have a realistic perspective of what you're doing, that helps keep you grounded. The responsibility side of it, once again, you either know what you're doing or you don't. If you don't know what you're doing, you have to be honest with yourself and know your limitations. Ask people who know. And I see this problem happens a lot with captains in our industry, project managers. It's impossible to know everything. And everybody starts somewhere in their career. So just ask. And you'll find somebody who will have an answer for you, So have humility and understand that in my opinion, it's a luxury to be able to take a yacht like this Feadship, completely rebuild it, and see the finished product. It's such a privilege, It's really cool to sit back and see the smiles on all the workers' faces, the owners' faces, the crew when they see they were a part of something pretty unique.
I just happy to see you smiling all the time and talk that positive way what you're talking right now. That's makes me so happy.
Yeah, it's such a great project. I just think you have to look at the bigger picture. When you bring these projects, I love what I do down here, and it's important for us to look after the boating community where we live. When people bring these projects to your neighborhood, to your city, to your place where you live, so many people benefit. I had a joke with that boat, and I said a lot of people had a really good Christmas because of that boat. And we would all joke about it, and it changed people's lives. There were several contractors whose work was, $600,000-$700,000. They're able to keep their employees paid, pay bonuses, buy themselves nice things. So I just feel people in the industry really need to be aware that if you do honest work, you do good work, and you're really conscientious and you consider the future, more and more boat owners will bring their boats to Fort Lauderdale, to South Florida, and we all benefit. When you don't do that, they go elsewhere. And that's not conducive to our business. It's not conducive to our industry down here. So I think if we all look out for each other and bring more and more people to our shores to do the work, it's going to be great for the future.
Going inside the boat right now to the main salon, what did you change over there?
So the main salon, we pretty much gutted it. We took everything out of the main salon. Floors, panels, ceilings, everything. It was a big rectangle. The owner of the yacht's wife owns an interior design company in Palm Beach. So her team really got on it and decided what they wanted to do and designed it. So we have such a wonderful integration of solid woods, stone, lighting, fabrics on the walls in some areas. So it really just made for a very warm and inviting interior that I think is going to be timeless. It's not over the top. It's not to a particular taste. It's just a great, warm, inviting room. The lighting that was done, I think, really made that boat. Throughout the entire boat, we probably added about close to 50% more lighting. And it really, I think, was a very big contributor to the overall outcome of the boat.
And if we're going forward and moving to the master cabin, what about that?
Moving forward into the passageways was the biggest challenge. We had to resurface all the walls. And the way it was done originally from Feadship with these horizontal panels made it a challenge. But we managed to fair everything out, make all the surfaces ready, prepare the surfaces to put the veneers on it, but we basically put veneers on every single wall in the passageways and in the guest cabins. So that was the challenge, having the right temperature to glue them on. Also, one of the big things about these refits, that's really a big consideration, is when you build a boat from scratch, You're building everything and you're putting all your trims, your corner beads to finish it off. When you're doing these refits, we're not doing that. It's like someone telling you to reframe a wall in your house, but you can't remove any baseboards, you can't remove any door frames, you can't remove any of the ceilings, and you've got to make it fit perfectly. So it just takes so much more time. It's inevitable sometimes there's going to be rework, but moving forward into the passageways was probably the area that had that, and the master cabin that had the biggest changes. We totally rebuilt the master cabin and those passageways.
Yeah, I saw that in person.
Yeah, yeah, it was interesting.
Even how you can see the sky from that cabin was.
Yeah, the master cabin. We couldn't do a lot in the actual cabin, so we put an amazing wallpaper on the wall, changed some soft goods, built in some cabinets, but the master bathroom, we gutted the master bathroom, and the result is just spectacular. Changing the direction of the bathtub, the fittings and fixtures, the lighting, the stone flooring, just completely changed that bathroom. It's really a showpiece. It's pretty unique.
Can we move to the pilot house right now?
Yes.
That's something that I want to share with everyone.
So the equipment was 10 years old. It was time to do an upgrade, and we worked with a wonderful electronics technician, Scott Fortune. His company is Green Go Marine. Scott's got a military background. His knowledge is, I wish I could plug my brain into his brain. He's just got so much knowledge in his head, and what a wonderful person to work with. We replaced all the electronics. Everything was taken off, from new radars, every VHF, night vision cameras. I mean, there wasn't one piece of electronics that we didn't change. So everything is really modern, completely up to date. Scott had to rerun new cables, integrate them into the boat's existing power supply. I mean, you would not know that it wasn't done at Feadship. Using the cable trays is just phenomenal, and these are things that help make a project really successful. So we have the electricians running wiring for the lighting, and Scott saying, guys, I'm already running wiring, so let me just run the wires for you. So they started working really closely together. Then Mark Jackson from Streamline did all the AV, and Mark's just, anybody who knows Mark, you don't even need to talk about Mark. He's just an amazing human being, and his team are exceptional. So then they're all talking together because they need to run cabling. So it's just great to see them all working together for the end result. But in the wheelhouse, we added 3 new monitors, and pretty much every single piece of electronics on the boat is new. So it's about as up to date as you could possibly be.
Let's go to below deck, and let's go to the engine room.
Okay.
That's a whole story.
Yep. So the engine room, we repainted all the bilges, everything. We have a wonderful guy that we hire for that work, and don't know how he does it, but he gets in there with needle guns and grinders and sanders, and he emerged 8 months later with just beautiful new bilges. We did a lot of work in the bilges, actually. Just the boat was 10 years old, and they hadn't really put any attention there.
I just want to mention that 10 years.
Yep. So we also just purchased the boat when it finished its 10-year special survey. So when you do that work, there's a lot of scratches and dents and dings and paint, peels off the boat. So we had to fix all of that. But we knew that when we purchased the boat, so it wasn't really a problem for us. Getting inside of the tanks, cleaning the tanks, it's just a lot of work to do there. We had to rebuild toilet systems. We did add 2 brand new water makers to the boat with a higher capacity, which is great. So we did everything with this refit that we thought we could possibly do, and we thought we were all done. And we did a shakedown trip in the Bahamas, and 10 hours outside of Fort Lauderdale, our starboard main engine started to leak coolant. So
How it was.
It was so funny. I personally did the trip over there, and anyhow, we docked at Norman Key once again through our wonderful group of contacts. Susan at Mendel Engineering sent us a brand new coolant circulating pump, a bunch of other spare parts. We flew it over with the owner of the boat's plane, which was a luxury to have. I replaced the water pump the next day and we carried on cruising, and then the other engine started the same leak, so we nursed it for a month, came back to Fort Lauderdale, and then just redid both engines completely. So we spent...
Again?
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, we just made the decision that let's just do it. The boat's going to go to Europe. The owner of the boat wants to have a wonderful time cruising the Baltics. We don't want any issues. So basically, every O-ring, every gasket that exists on those engines' cooling systems, we replaced. And Mendel's guys pulled it off. I mean, they did it in 3 weeks. So they replaced every hose clamp. It's pretty neat to see it done.
To make this all happen, first one, I want to give you lots of credit because yes, you've been in the industry a lot, very long time, and you know all these people who you can call, and they will fix, and they will help, and they will be there for you. So it's giving a lot of credit to you because you're a very trustful person and somebody who they like you to work with so many years. So I'm very honored that you are here with me right now, sharing your knowledge and your story as well about this project and your mindset and your vision of all in the industry as well. It means a lot for me. I very appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, that's the first part. And second part, which I want to mention again here, it's about the suppliers which you work with, because it's not just about people, it's about all these things what should be delivered in time.
Yep.
How you deal with that?
So that was a very big challenge. We've done so many of these repairs and projects, and we definitely were humbled by some moments. There's a big problem in the supply chain. So one thing we realized in every industry across the board, our clients are telling us the same things, and if they're in manufacturing, that there's a big issue with supply. So
why?
A lot of it has to do with overflow from COVID, but I think a lot of it also is these companies spend millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars keeping stock. And they have stock on the shelf, and then it happened in the financial collapse, it happened with COVID. They're stuck with all this inventory that they can't use. So they lose millions of dollars by having to get rid of the stock. So from what we're seeing and what people are telling us is they're just not keeping the same stock on the shelves. But also with regards to engineering, if you have a component that has an O-ring in it or has rubber seals, the rubber, it's deteriorating. So if it sits on a shelf for 2 years and then you buy that component, it's probably going to break. So you want something that's new, especially when it comes to front end seals for a main engine, for example, or things with O-rings.
And it's how much it costs?
Those components? Well, they range from, we redid our big hydraulic garage door, and that's a $250,000 repair.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's huge amounts of money, but they're big, really important pieces of equipment. If a garage door fails on a boat out at sea, you are in an emergency situation. Your boat's probably going to sink, as many have. So, but back to the supply chain and the components, we really realized that we had to work in a different way. We had to anticipate and be realistic with timeframes. So also you can dramatically change the cost of a project by expediting all your components with shipping. If you're going to send something by ocean freight that weighs 2,000 pounds, and then you ship that on air freight, sometimes it costs as much as the component to ship it. So you have to really find that balance of what do we need now and what can we wait for? Or just change the way you work. When you spend your life at sea like I did, you learn to change direction according to the weather. That kind of becomes a motto, right? So you just change direction, keep the project flowing, try not to have wasted time. So if you had planned to do a project now, but you cannot do it because of lack of parts, or you have to wait for the parts, then focus on another part that you can take care of now. It's so circumstantial. That just depends on what's going on at the time. But the components are a big issue. The materials are a big issue. We'd order 30 sheets of veneer and we'd get 20.
How did that happen?
They don't have it.
Okay.
They just don't have it in stock.
So what are you doing in this situation?
We use the 20 sheets of veneer and we reorder the balance of what we need, and we move on to another area that we can work on where we do have the material. So it's just really important to really understand what it is you're doing, communicate with the vendors and the subcontractors, and then sometimes you're just stuck and you have to accept it and move on to something else.
Other question, did you change any subcontractors during the refit?
No.
That's perfect.
No, we did not. We were so fortunate. There were a couple of obstacles with a couple of subcontractors, but nothing that wasn't insurmountable. We were able to work through our problems. Most of the problems with that came, it's a European boat. And there are some systems that are, specifically European. 400 volts, for example, 3-phase equipment, it's just different. So a lot of people who work here are not all used to that. So when you find the right workers, so the issue wasn't so much with confrontation as opposed to a knowledge base. But we would reach out to Feadship. Of course, they're so helpful. They're so helpful. They treat you like you just purchased a 200-foot yacht yesterday. They don't discriminate between buying a 10-year-old boat and buying a new boat. In our experience, they treated us like we were their only customer. Little things like door latches and doorknobs that you just can't find. We would work through it, give us drawings, give us plans. So it was really more of a knowledge base than conflict in the workplace. But no, we didn't change not one subcontractor.
So let's go to whole story, back to whole vision of the refit. Probably I should call this new build.
Yeah, it was close.
So how many parts involved it? You as a project manager, owner as a owner, interior designer, architect, subcontractors. Who I missed?
So yeah, it's an interesting one. So first of all, we purchased the boat in Hong Kong.
Yes.
That in itself was really interesting.
You delivered that boat from Hong Kong by yourself?
Well, no, I flew to Hong Kong. So it was an interesting process, and I'll tell you. So the owner of the boat had wanted to buy another boat, and he kept on sending me boats, and I'm my own worst enemy. I just said to him, for someone like yourself, you need a proper yacht. You need a first-class yacht. You need a yacht that's
you need
European or German. I said to him, you need a Feadship. He didn't want to have a very large boat, so obviously we were very limited in what we could buy in that real pedigree type vessel. I'd sent him this boat several months prior, and he just wasn't in a place. We'd made an offer, and then he said, Brian, I'm not ready right now. So several months later, he had some issues with his existing boat, and we revisited the conversation, and I said, I really think that's the boat for you. If you're okay with cutting off those 2 decks, that's going to be the boat for you. And he messaged me that night and said, I'm flying to Hong Kong tomorrow. So he went with a really close friend of his to Hong Kong, jumped on board the boat, called me and said, I get it.
Wow, I have a goosebumps right now.
I get it. He said, I just see the boat. I feel it, the quality, everything is just where I wanted to. So yeah, then I flew to Hong Kong, did the deal on the boat, and went through all the paperwork. put her on a ship, and then the ship arrived in Mexico 3 weeks later. So at the time, the Panama Canal was not functioning in full operation. They were very limited because they had a drought and there was no water in the reservoir, so there were very limited sailings. So this ship wasn't going to be able to go through the canal. But they had a dockwise ship that was coming from New Zealand to Mexico. So a gentleman from Seven Star in Hong Kong, Charles, was really, really helpful. And he said, what if we take you off this ship, put you on dockwise, then you can come through the canal. And he said there won't be any extra charge for it, we'll just transfer you. So
Wonderful.
we flew to Mexico, took the boat off the ship, put it onto dockwise, and then 2 weeks later, we took the boat off in Fort Lauderdale. But then there's a whole lot of other things. So back to your question of how many people are involved. Then there's flag state, class. And then to enter into the United States, you need your certificate of financial responsibility. You need to make sure your MARPOL, your pollutions are all in place. And we purchased the boat very quick and then put it on a ship. So normally have time to do these things. And
this is way how you're doing everything.
it is. But Ali Moss represented us on the legal side, and they were really fantastic in helping all of this. But there was a moment when we transferred the funds to purchase the boat, and your money goes to no man's land. It's in Hong Kong. So it was interesting. There was one day that the owner of the boat talks about where he said, I had a really nervous day where for about 5 hours you couldn't trace the money. So that was an interesting one. And then we got a call saying they've received the funds, but that was interesting. Yeah, and then we did a 2-week trip in the Bahamas with the boat. It was a new toy. Wanted to see it and feel it and see what it was like. It was great. And then came to Fort Lauderdale, and pretty much, I think it was the 12th of April, the boat came out the water at Lauderdale Marine Center. And then everything started from there.
And what right now going back to Feadship shipyard?
So the plan is, so she's on a ship right now as we speak,
Yes.
headed to Holland.
Taking her sun bath
Yes, oh yes.
in the middle of ocean.
She's up on the deck of the boat. Watching them lift that boat is very daunting, but they're really good at it. So the boat will go to a Feadship facility. We'll do a couple of small things. It's actually just by chance that we're going there. It's the only place that can accommodate the boat, so we couldn't find a marina in Holland.
I like the environment, what you and services, what you build and what you're giving to your clients. You fixing each part in the yachting industry for your client. Like you providing finance, you're amazing yacht sales broker, you're a captain, you're an engineer, you have the Savvy Academy, you train the crew, you manage the boats. Brian, just...
Well, I think that's because I'm passionate about what I do. You know, from when I was really young, I always wanted to know how things worked.
You really love
and
this
why
industry.
I do. The industry has been amazing to me. I hope I've been amazing to the industry. You know, I hope that goes both ways.
I'm sure.
I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't agree with the way I do things, and I know for a fact there are a lot of people who do agree with the way that I do things. But for me, I just dial it right back to very, very simple terms. We're not entitled to anything. You know, we are surrounded by extreme wealth. And I think as long as you understand your function, do the best you can do, but also know your limitations. You know, I think we're in a really tough time with our industry right now, just with a lack of experience. It's very hard to tell someone they don't know. It makes you come across as being arrogant. It's almost insulting to them. So how do you explain to a young person who's trying their best that you were just trained incorrectly? You can be really good because you have all the things in place to be good, but you need experience. This is a big challenge today. But yeah, I'm so passionate about it. And when I was really young and I was crossing the oceans on boats at the age of 12 or 13 on a sailboat, my dad made us understand how things worked. It was really important, and then when I got into yachting, I said, I'm not going to rely on somebody else to make me safe in the middle of the ocean. So I wanted to know the engineering. I wanted to know the navigation. I was passionate about food. So I was interested in what the chefs did. And I was also very fortunate at the time when I was in my early 20s. I worked for the pioneer of yacht chartering. He is the reason why we have yacht charters today. And I'm also showing my age here. Andreas Liveros is his name. And, a lot of older people in the industry will remember who he was. But he made a business out of yacht chartering. So I really wanted to learn all aspects of it, from a charter clan perspective, from an owner's perspective, a captain, a deckhand. So when I tried to accumulate all this knowledge and be informed, I was able to give a good service. You're able to negotiate with subcontractors, engineers, captains, boat owners. One of the things that this industry brings to you is you can talk to the wealthiest people in the world, dignitaries, business people, and you can talk to the guy on the street corner. And I think when you're able to communicate with everybody globally in every country in the world, it's such a great tool to have.
Many more future projects for you.
Thank you.